Okay, so if I have to choose a position of who I would agree with more, or who I would say understands and misunderstands the nature of inequality, I would say that Burke has a better understanding and understands the nature of equality, and Rousseau has a misunderstanding of equality. I mean, they both make great arguments, and they one thing they both do is they both go into the state of nature, and they both propose the significance of equality and inequality in the state of nature. But where they differ is their application of it and the ideals they take from it on both sides. But I think that what separates Burke and Rousseau is the fact that Burke recognizes and puts an example to the societal significance that um, the nature of inequality has, that of what inequality has. And when you have the significance of it, the application of it, it shows a better understanding of the nature of it, right? Because what Rousseau does is he fails to argue the importance that it takes in preserving social order. um to discover the nature of inequality, you have to go into natural law, but inequality is prominent in a societal aspect. And the fact that Rousseau oversimplifies it and does not go into the importance of recognizing the role it plays in preserving it shows his lack of understanding or his misunderstanding of the nature of inequality. But to discover this, you have to go into both sides. So just to show Rousseau's a viewpoint of how it differs. Rousseau, his guiding question was, what is the origin of inequality, and is it justified by natural law? And he dives into the state of nature and says how human beings in the state of nature have three components. Yeah, three components, and that's amour de soi, compassion, and perfectibility. Their amour de soi is like a self-love, that self-sufficient aspect of humans, and then the compassion is the caring side for other humans. You need help, I'm there. And then the perfectibility aspect of human beings, just the ability to be better, almost to parallel like sanctification in Christianity. You're never going to get to that perfection standpoint, but you're trying to make yourself look more like Jesus. You're going to follow in his footsteps to sanctify yourself, become more of a saint. Same thing with perfectibility, just to be the best you can possibly be and thrive. And that once modernization came into play, it kind of messed it up. Oh man, sorry. It kind of messed it up. And he actually says, as ideas and feelings succeeded one another, and the heart and head were brought into play, men continued to lay aside their original wildness. Their private connections became every day more intimate as their limits extended. They accustomed themselves to assemble before their huts around a large tree, singing and dancing, a true offspring of love and leisure, became the amusement of rather than occupation of men, and thus women assembled together with nothing else to do. Each one began to consider the rest and to wish to be considered in turn, and thus a value came to be attached to public esteem. Whoever sang or danced the best, whoever was the handsomest, the strongest, the most dexterous, the most eloquent, came to the most of consideration. And this was the first step towards inequality, and at the same time towards vice, right? And then he goes furthermore in saying that there was a cooperative living, that there was a comparative living that began to come, as mentioned in the thing, but you were looking at people who were better than you, and that these natural inequalities that people naturally have, came into play. He says, I can explain how much this universal desire for reputation, honors, and advancement, which inflames us all, exercises and holds up to comparison our faculties and powers, how it excites and multiplies our passions, and by creating universal competition and a rivalry, or rather enmity among men, occasions numberless failures, successes, and disturbances of all kinds, by making so many aspirations run the same course. I'm not going to read the rest, but what he was pretty much saying here was that there was I believe the amour de soi got destroyed. The self-love became destroyed because the comparative living came into play. And he argued that the first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground, bethought himself of saying, "This is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of civil society. From how many crimes and wars and murders, how many honors and misfortunes might not anyone have mankind by pulling up the stakes or filling up the ditch and crying to his fellows, beware of listening to this impostor. You are undone if you once forget the fruits of the earth belonging to us all, and earth to nobody. He's saying once property came into play, not so much as like property itself, but once that first man claimed that this was his, and it came from just that level of inequality, it solidified it, because the moment people began to benefit from inequality is the moment it was solidified, and that social validation is what left it there. And that was so much as his answer, but what he fails to see was the significance. What Rousseau fails to see was the significance it has into society, which is where Burke comes in. And Burke, he takes more of a different route in the nature, state of nature for this. And he says there's different qualities that they don't have compassion. He views it in the nous techne and the phronesis. And the phronesis is technical wisdom that the government brings. Then you have your nous, which is your abstract ideas, and then your techne. He takes more of an epistemological route, the more theory of knowledge route, and he deals more in these abstract ideas, right? The significance that the government has, that we all have our natural law, we all have our natural abilities, we all have our natural rights, and what the government does kind of kicks us back into place, and that the government is needed for our stability, and it's more of our guidelines. But where what he says here, believe me, sir, those who attempt to level never equalize. In all societies consisting of various descriptions of citizens, some description must be uppermost. The levelers therefore only change to prevent the natural order of things. They load the edifice of society by sitting up in the air with the solidity of the structure requires to be on the ground. The associations of trailers and carpenters, of which the Republic of Paris, for instance, is composed, cannot be equal to the situation to which, by the worst usurpation on the prerogatives of nature, you attempt to force them. And what this is so much as saying is just the natural inequality that there is in a society. But where Burke takes a different route was he was saying the importance that is so much is had, that there should be so much as an aristocracy. I'm sorry, I'm just tripping right now. The aristocracy, which there is a higher class in certain societies, and okay, the gradual change in sudden dispersion. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Bottom line is this, right? We got to dive more into what Burke has to say. He says the human has natural stages: your savagery, your barbarianism, and then your civilization, right? And he goes through the different time and stages of the hunting to the pasture to the agriculture to the commerce to this stadial account of history. And he uses the French Revolution as a good example with Marie Antoinette. And for time's sake, I'm not going to get all into that, but the part that we do want to focus on was the aspect of the savagery they resorted to when the revolution came, and the lack of order there was, and the significance that the government, that that social inequality played, because it wasn't there. That savage-like demeanor is what kind of almost set that revolution. It was. I'm more in a video. This for class. It's kind of what it stamped the revolution. The savage like returning there, where we went to a civil society back to savagery. That was the significance of the government, and the fact that the aristocracy had that innate division. The inequality was significant in guiding human beings. So it's so much is needed, because what it does is the functionality it plays, it adds to the structural demands a society needs to thrive. And I guess that is so much the difference between Burke and Rousseau, and why Burke is on top, because what he says is that inequality is what kind of makes a society thrive. You need people to play certain parts, right? That technique, as mentioned before, the skills base, everyone has a part to play. And that's where that nature comes from.